how to say this? There was a time when, in order to use the computer, you had to program the computer. You had to know how to program the computer. And then there was a transition to applications, and in order to use a computer, you had to learn how to operate applications like a word processor or a spreadsheet or something like that. And who knows what other transformations are in store for us. But the transition from programmer to user simply invited a lot more people into computer usership than had been there before. And that expansion, I think, is the really sociologically interesting thing that took place. We saw that picture, right? Spreadsheets were invented for people who were using personal computers. I mean, spreadsheets are an innovation, right? And that's what they date to, is personal computers. So the internet gives us a way of sharing information, even if there are gatekeepers like archive.org. But sharing information, being in a position where I have something to say and I can now publish it, is the big social change brought about by the internet. And this is simply bringing more and more people into positions of empowerment. It's not subtracting from the number of computer programmers. It's adding more people.
I completely agree with what you say. We can take it back a bit further. I think you started by saying that if you wanted to use computing, you had to program it. Well, for some people, if you wanted to use a computer, first of all, you had to build it. And Maurice Wilkes created EDSAC, which was running in 1949, I think, started in 1949, and I think it probably was decommissioned around 1960 or something. And he had to build it. I had a copy, I borrowed a copy of his autobiography, and he explained the construction of the vacuum lines. The vacuum, they're not the mercury storage, the RAM. Was it RAM? He used mercury. It propagated a wave, a sound wave through mercury as the refreshable memory. The RAM in your computer has to be refreshed. It has to be refreshed on a cycle, and it has to be read on a cycle. And instead of using the electronics, they used a physical memory, which is a mercury delay line. And what happens is you make a pulse here, and it might be some size or the other. It goes down the delay line, comes back again at the other end. The signal at the other end can be read by the software, by the computing part of the software, but it can also be fed back to the beginning, cleaned up to be a 0 or a 1, and sent off again. So in that way, you could have a refreshable memory storage. And the thing that impressed me was that he was building this, and this is post-war Britain, austerity Britain, and he needed mercury, which is a dangerous substance. We know that now. And he thought he'd try to use thermometer mercury rather than the more expensive vacuum pump mercury. Vacuum pump mercury is quite pure because it has impurities. They gas off when you produce the vacuum. Use mercury to produce vacuum pumps for high vacuum. But anyway, he built these delay lines using barometer mercury, and the results were insufficiently consistent to allow them to work as memory tubes. So he had to siphon off all this mercury and send it to the supplier and said, can you pay? We'll pay you the extra. Can you purify this mercury so we can use it for the delay lines? So people actually had to build their own computers and so forth. And there was no distinction between a software engineer and a hardware engineer, particularly. And what is it? In the United States, is it called the Institute for Computing Machinery, the ICM? I think that's right. And historically, computing has been a department of electrical engineering or a department of mathematics, just depending on whether they thought of the hardware or the software first. Yeah, the introduction of computers is an enormous change in the world. And from the point of view of print technology, print is a means where information could be disseminated over time and space. You can, if you're Martin Luther, you can write your theses on the Catholic Church and the indulgences and everything, and you can take one copy and nail it to the door of the cathedral as a sign of your protest, and you can give another copy of that to your friendly local printer, who can print off thousands and thousands of copies, and they can be distributed across the whole of Germany. So printing revolutionized society because it allowed information to be transmitted across time and space. I have on my bookshelf a book printed in the 1920s that has got pictures of printing machinery. And it's enormous machinery. The machines are bigger than the size of a house. Printing newspaper presses are big things because they have to print large numbers. And all this, together with the paper mills and the forests of Canada and the railways, all this was so that the country could get their newspaper with their breakfast or with their tea break in the morning, and information could be transmitted. And that was the high point until radio came. And radio transmitted through space, but didn't transmit through time. Radio recordings got lost. And computers and networks, and Sun's slogan is "the network is the computer." Computers and networks have completely revolutionized the creation and the dissemination of information. And if you don't believe me, look what's in front of you. It's a computer screen. And the information is coming on a computer. That would have been unthinkable 15 years ago, I think. Close to unthinkable. Certainly on a sort of domestic setting. In the Second World War, they had scrambler telephones so that Roosevelt and Churchill could communicate in secret without being overheard. Nowadays, we've got WhatsApp, which is, unless there's a back door, secure communication that is considerably easier to use and more reliable and so forth than scrambler telephones. So the communication of information has really changed, and tech was part of that revolution, which was started, if you like, by electronic and photo typesetting and computer control typesetting and so forth. So who knows what this century will provide?